Good games are hard to make, and good stories are hard to write. And I want to talk about both, more specifically personal characters in the story of games. Now, what I'm talking about is game stories that involve a character that you create. You choose what they are, how they look, what they do, and on rare occasion, what they say. However, this topic is fairly subjective, and I'm mostly going to be speaking about it from my perspective and the games that I've played. But I do still want to talk about this as I think it's a somewhat interesting topic, and some of my favorite games are those with personal characters in it. So let's start by talking about when I don't think it's done very well. Now, an example for where I feel like it isn't done very well is Destiny 2. Now, the overall story has been very hit or miss, but I'm just going to try and focus on the personal character aspect of the story and how it's been implemented into the game. And the best example I can give for the way that your character is treated in Destiny is kind of like a dog or a pit bull. Now, give me a second to explain myself. I know that sounds stupid and insane, and I am both of those things, but hold on. People like you and view you with respect, even talking to you from time to time, even if it's usually a one-sided conversation because you don't say anything. But the main reason people talk to you, call on you, or even really say anything to you is usually because they have a problem that they need you to get rid of for one reason or another. To put it bluntly, in Destiny, you are usually the gun that gets pointed at the enemies of humanity or whoever you're working with. People respect you and see you with admiration, but usually just because of how good you are at fighting and killing, really not for many other reasons otherwise. And while this does feed into the power fantasy that Destiny provides through its gameplay of wiping out rooms of enemies with just the snap of your fingers, it does also leave little room in terms of character nuance and actual personality. What I mean is that our character has very little impact outside of just killing the bad guy. That doesn't mean our character hasn't done other things, like when we freed Crow from his imprisonment under Spider back in the season of the Hunt, but that is one of the very few times I can think of a situation that isn't just a god has shown up, kill it and shove its essence into a gun as it screams in pain. Now, I will admit, during the Final Shape expansion, the writers tried doing things differently, and to great effect, I might add, at least in my opinion. The moments where we would listen to our ghost's thoughts on the situations we were in, or the cutscene where we just sat with everyone and watched as Crow lamented over Amanda's death, wishing things were different. Seeing our character beg the Traveler to bring back our ghosts, or the Witness talking about our community, like how we chase after god rolls or titles for, recognition. These were all things that added more depth to our character and our character's relationship to other characters, without giving our character a personality for us. However, Final Shape is really the only exception I can think of that does this type of stuff to this degree. And while this, to a certain extent, is kind of a critique, that doesn't mean I hate the other good stories of Destiny like Forsaken, Witch Queen, Taken King. I still like all of these, but the Final Shape stood out to me in a very specific way because of everything that I just mentioned before. It's very easy for a story that has a personal character in it to just ignore the many aspects of what make a character in a story, as there are multiple ways a personal character can be handled in a story. The character can just be a vehicle for the player, not having any personality, nuance, or even a voice. You just get told what to do, you do it, and the characters say, "Good job," and send you off to the next job, with this probably being one of the easiest ways to do it. Another way is that a story can put personality into your character, giving them a voice, a backstory, and heavy characterization, but at the cost of making it feel less like your character. Now, there are likely many other ways to try and do it as well. I just simply can't think of any more ways at the time of me recording this. However, you can try to find a balance of what I just mentioned, giving the character a hint of personality, giving them moments of characterization, but leaving many things unsaid when it comes to the character and who they are or were, so that it can still feel like your character and results in your character having a voice without making it feel any less like your character, giving an interesting balance. This last one is my ideal case for a personal character in a story, and one game I have personally come across has done it like this and resulted in giving me one of my personal favorite stories to date. Final Fantasy XIV sits at a very odd spot for me, as from what I can remember, this is the only game I think I've ever played in my entire life where the main, if not only motivation to play and go through the game for me personally was because of the story. As far as MMOs go, it has enjoyable gameplay that's satisfying and is fun, but I've never liked MMOs personally. So if it wasn't for the story, I probably would have stopped playing by roughly the 10-15 hour mark. But I didn't stop, and got to enjoy one of my favorite stories that I think I have ever personally experienced. And one of the many factors that made me enjoy it as much as I did was how they used your personal character in the story. As your character doesn't have a voice, but still speak. What I mean is that your character doesn't have any voice work behind them, but your character is still treated as if they speak. And in a weird way, this actually works. It lets you give your own character their voice as you fill in the blank as they lack any actual voice, making it feel like your character even more, but still giving them a presence in the world. It also gives the writers the ability to let you choose what you say during some cutscenes. Now granted, in most cutscenes what you say has very little effect, and most of the time doesn't even change what the characters say to you, but still, it's nice to have a small choice in what you say every now and again, even if it doesn't mean anything. And going back to what I was speaking about Destiny, when you have a character speak to you, or even just have a mental breakdown in front of you, it's well written most of the time, like Eris's outburst in Shadowkeep, but sometimes I've been taken out of it because I can't help but just imagining my character staring at them or not consoling or saying anything to them, and it kind of just takes me out of it a little bit. However, there is a bit of a positive to having our character not say anything in Destiny, as when our character does say something, it adds to the significance of what they say because they don't say anything often. But I digress. Final Fantasy XIV gives your character a voice without giving them a voice, but this also applies to how they treat your character generally, making them feel like a person without giving them a full personality. So again, you can fill in the blanks in your own head, making them feel like your own character even more. And because they work to make your character feel like an actual person, this gives them opportunity to have story beats that I personally haven't seen in other games, like the idea of legacy, titles, and carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, and how this would take a toll on anyone. The story makes an effort to point out how your character has saved many lives multiple times over, and how this would take a toll on anyone, with how they have cutscenes dedicated to just having characters ask if yours is okay, or having them feel bad when you have to face insurmountable odds on your own, more than once usually. The only thing that personally bothers me with Final Fantasy XIV's story is when it comes to the occasional ludonarrative dissonance, as the cutscenes don't change based off of what your class is. So for example, there was a cutscene in the Endwalker expansion where a woman was running helplessly trying to save her baby from a monster that was attempting to kill her and her child. And all my character did the entire time was just watch helplessly, because the game or the story usually treats you as if you are a character wielding a melee weapon. But I was a ranged magic class, so I had the ability realistically to summon a phoenix and then blow up that monster with a supernova, but due to the ludonarrative dissonance, I was treated as if I have a melee weapon, so all my character did was watch helplessly. And that did slightly take me out of it, but from what I remember, that's one of the few times where that does happen. Yet everything that I mentioned before this still made my character feel like more than just a cool person that hit a bad guy really hard. They felt like a person. They felt like my character, and that's not even mentioning when the character does do something cool, or the well-written and charismatic characters that you find yourself surrounded by, or the amazing music. Yeah, I like the story of this game, if you couldn't tell. But to continue on the MMO thing, I did try Guild Wars 2, which is somewhat similar in terms of how they treat the character, but I'm not going to really mention or talk about it as I didn't play it that much, and I feel like I just don't have enough experience in it to talk or critique about it in this video, but for the little bit I did play it, I thought it was interesting how they let you choose your backstory and things of that nature. I thought that was cool, but I'll leave it at that. I just didn't play Guild Wars that much, so... There is also the story of Monster Hunter Wilds, which kinda does everything that I mentioned in Final Fantasy XIV, just to a much lesser extent, and I do honestly like a Monster Hunter Wild story. The main ensemble you're with is alright, the main plot points are delivered well enough, and it does honestly make our character look very cool at times. In general, it was a decent enough story. I wanted to follow it, and its characters, but at no point did it really blow me away. It was just a decent and somewhat enjoyable story that I overall liked. There are also games like Warframe that I think found an in-between compared to Destiny and Final Fantasy XIV, as our character in Warframe is voiced, but I wouldn't say that they have their personality written out for you, and while you do commit multiple war crimes a day, your character will still do things that help others through means that aren't just killing. As one of my favorite quests in a game, the Sacrifice shows that Tenno have the power to help others, to heal a pain that no one else can help them heal. And even the 1999 update is similar to this. And the fact that Warframe storytelling in general has improved over the years has made it all the more better to indulge in, even without the personal character aspect. But to be more specific on what I mean by Warframe as an in-between, is that our character isn't just the gun that everyone wants to use on their enemies. As with a backstory given to our characters, there is still a notable amount of characterization, but there isn't as much characterization as Final Fantasy XIV. There still is some, just I don't think it's as much as Final Fantasy XIV, so it finds itself at an in-between of Destiny and Final Fantasy XIV, in my opinion. However, there are a few games that give you a heavy amount of freedom to do what you want with your character, with one of those games being It does make sense that Baldur's Gate 3, a game based off of D&D, an experience that is pretty much exclusively meant for personal characters, is here. It makes sense. This game won Game of the Year for a reason. It's a superb experience, and having the freedom that you do to make your own character is notable. From how they look, play, what they say, most of it is up to you, even where the story goes. The amount of freedom to do what you want is genuinely really fun, and that's not to even mention all the other good things that the game has. However, this game and the ones I mentioned before are of fairly different genres, with most of the ones that I mentioned before being mostly live service. I do think single-player games, or creations specifically curated for personal characters, are some of the most fun I've had in games. To give another example, one of my favorite single-player games is Dragon Age Inquisition, a BioWare game. I miss when that used to mean something good. This game is similar to Baldur's Gate 3 as it's a single-player experience created with having a personal character in mind, but is different as the roles that your characters take in the stories that they're in are fairly different, and the games just overall are fairly different as well. But the main thing that I like with Dragon Age is how your character is fully voiced, yet you still have a good amount of choices when it comes to what you say to other characters, and this can also affect your relationship with them, adding to the experience even more. I do really enjoy these games, but what I look for is very specific and very particular, and also sometimes I feel like there just aren't many games that have a decent or high budget that are made like this, at least that I have personally seen. And I do think there really is a reason that not many people have tried their hand at these type of games. Granted, there are likely a good amount that just don't really care for this genre or trying to make a game like this, but I do think some have avoided trying it because of how hard it is. The time and effort it must take to just put branching paths into a game based off of a player's choices must be staggering. Having to put a fully voiced dialogue system in the game probably makes some game developers shudder in fear, and I don't blame them. Not to mention the cost of getting a voice actor to do all of those lines to begin with as well. Yet, if someone tries their hand at it to begin with and goes as far as making a well-made experience, I think It has the potential to provide some of the most memorable experiences possible, and some of the most memorable experiences I've ever had when it comes to media in general. Now, why did I talk about all of this in honestly a bit of a all over the place type of tone and just general structuring? I don't know. I didn't really have a message behind this. I'm not trying to tell you something. I just like personal characters in games. That's not to say I want a personal character in every game, or I want every game to be like what I talked about before. If a game has a story it wants to tell with its own characters in its own way, then it should. If a story is good, then it's just good, personal character or not. And even in other forms of media, you can still feel emotions from books, movies, shows, but video games are the only form of media that I think personal characters can work to begin with, as they let you do more than just see and experience a story. They let you be a part of it, growing and changing with it, letting you feel like you're a part of something. So when something great happens in that world that you feel a part of, it makes it feel even better. And when something tragic happens, it makes it feel even worse. I didn't really have any goal with this video in mind. I just like personal characters. I wanted to talk about, in a sort of brief and again a bit chaotic structuring, talk about it, talk about my personal experiences and what I do like, what I don't like, what I wish they would do, and I'm grateful that you sat here and listened to my ramblings. Thank you. It honestly means a lot to me, and I would be grateful if you decided to stick around. But the time you've already taken to sit here and listen to me is more than enough for me, so thank you. Truly. And if you would be willing, I would be grateful to maybe see you in the next video. Whatever it's gonna be. I don't really know what I'm doing. I just kind of do whatever comes to mind, and if I like it, I go through with it. To be fair, I don't really even think that this is a good video, but I wanted to talk about it, so I'm talking about it. So thank you again for being here. And I will hopefully see you in the next video.